بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ثم الصلاة والسلام على البشير النذير والسراج المنير أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. Again, Muharram comes and it reminds us of the ethical and humanistic values personified in the character of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions. We can claim that the incident of Karbala has kept Islam alive and progressive. And that's why Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi says it is through Muharram and Safar that Islam has been kept alive. So, as we know, the story of Karbala is a very multidimensional and broad topic, and every speaker chooses one aspect or several aspects of this great story and talks about it in details. The topic I have chosen for this series of talk to delve into it is divine trends of history, analytical Karbala. So we want to analyze Karbala to find out the trends of history. But before we talk about our topic, we shall first define what we mean by trends of history. Second, discuss the importance of the topic, why we want to discuss it. And third, we should say why incident of Karbala in specific in order to find these trends of history. And after that, we can enter our topic. So the first point, the definition of the topic. To judge any historical event in an influential and fair manner, we need three elements. The first element is sufficient and necessary information about that event. How did it happen, the nature of it, and the rest of the story. We need necessary and sufficient information in order to be able to draw the full picture. The second thing that we need is the general laws that govern the societal movement, the historical movement, which affected that incident. In this specific example, we are talking about the incident of Karbala. So what are the general laws of the society and the history which affected that incident? And the third thing is to understand and analyze the humanistic values presented in that event. For our topic, we will be talking about the second element, the general laws or the trends of history. Before I explain further, let me give you an introduction. Any ilm, any science, any knowledge usually is divided in two parts. One is the ilm itself, and the other one is mawdu' al-ilm. So ilm, what is the science? Second is what's the subject of the science. I'll give you an example. For example, medicine. Medicine is the science which talks about the laws that govern the human body, the physiology and the pathophysiology. But the mawdu' al-ilm, or the subject of the ilm, is diseases, is the anatomy, is the physiology. In regard to history, unfortunately, in nearly all the languages, Farsi, Arabic, English, for both topics, the same term has been utilized. So for ilm, we call it history, and for mawdu' al-ilm, we call it history as well. But we know the first history, which is ilm, is the laws, the relationship of the events. How did it happen? The effects and the consequences and the trends. And the second one, which is mawdu' al-ilm, we are talking about set of events, phenomena, rise and fall of civilization, which happen in the human life in relation between a human and another human, between a tribe and another tribe, between a nation and another nation, and human and the nature, which happened in the past in a specific location. So that's the mawdu' al-ilm. So we are discussing these things in history, but the history in terms of ilm, we are talking about the general laws which govern the historical movement. So because of this confusion and many other factors, we have not understood history well. Inshallah, in later sessions, I will talk about how history was written and how it affected our understanding of the past. So, I give you an example. Who is a historian? From our common understanding, historian is the one who knows the events of the past in full details. But that's not the right title. He's a knowledgeable person about the past, but he's not a historian. Historian is someone who knows the relationships between the events, the nature of the events, the laws that govern the societal movement and the trends of history. And that's a thinker. So there is a difference between a knowledgeable and a thinker. I'll give you a very simple example. For example, we have a laborer who brings the material for building a house. Laborer brings them, but these materials, bricks, cement, metal, they do not have any relationship with each other. They are just raw materials. But it's the architect who comes along and connect these things together and build something out of it. So this is the difference in the definition of a historian. Okay. So the discussion that we will be having in this series of talks is about the laws and the trends of history. We believe that the line of history is governed by a set of laws, which lead to rise and fall of nations, civilization, and societies. So we will try to understand the philosophy of history and then extrapolate that to understand the laws which govern the incident of Karbala. So we have covered first the definition of the topic. Now we should discuss the importance of the topic. Why are we discussing this topic? Firstly, the event of Karbala happened in the timeline of history. And we should ask a question here, that why are we repeating the incident of Karbala, the narration of the Karbala, for the last 14 centuries? If you remember, I talked about the three elements. The first element, we need the necessary and sufficient information about the event. What we have been doing the last 14 centuries is just to cover mainly that first element. So it has been always a question for me, and I'm sure it's a question for other brothers and sisters, that what's the benefit of narrating the same story and sometimes even add distortion and fabrication to that story to add some sort of emotional dimension to it? Are we getting any benefits out of this? For 14 centuries we've been doing that. And we go to the mosque, listen to the same thing, which has been repeated several times, and come back home. And that's why usually Shias are criticized, saying that, why do you dig the history? Bring dead bodies out and fight. And that's why they say, تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Verse 134, Surah Baqarah. So those were the nations came before you. Whatever they did, they'll be liable for it. And whatever you do, you are liable. And the momentum is here. وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And you will not be judged and you will not be questioned about what they were doing. And this verse has been repeated twice in close proximity, 134 and verse 141. And it's interesting, it's in a position located in Surah Al-Baqarah where Quran is talking about the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam and his tribe, how they escaped, how they went to the Qarya, and the tribe said that we لن نصبر على طعام واحد, and then the Yawm al-Sabt, and then God asked them to slaughter, and all these. And Quran talked about that, and then comes and tells us تلك أمة قد خلت لها ما كسبت, and then ولا تسألون عما كانوا يعملون, and repeated twice in close proximity. So why does Quran tell us, do not worry about what happened Don't get involved too much into the details of the events. Okay. At the same time, a big portion of the Quran, about 2,000 verses, are about the history and the stories of prophets and different tribes in the past. That's one. And second, Quran in numerous verses invite people to go and see what happened in the past. قد خلت من قبلكم سنن فسيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. Verse 137, Ali Imran. He's saying, before you were nations and there were trends there. Sunan. Go search in the earth and see what happened to the liars. So there's an open invitation. So to solve the contradiction here, we can claim that Quran doesn't want us to be historian in the first definition, someone who knows the events of the past in full details. And that's why in Quran we can see Quran doesn't care about the details of history. For example, how someone looked, or for example, the timing of the event or the age of the people, doesn't care about that. So Quran wants us to be historian in the second definition, to understand the laws and the trends of the history which govern this historical movement. By understanding them, then we can predict the future and we can build our future. That's why in many verses of the Quran says that go and see what happened to liars, so the same thing does not happen to you. And it is that's why we want to cover this topic. We don't want to just narrate the story of Karbala, repeating the same details or adding some distortion to it over and over. Rather, we want to delve into the trends, try to scrutinize the trends and the laws of history which were manifested in the story of Karbala. The second reason why we want to do this topic is, as sociologists say, every individual is defined as the history of his or her society. So here there is a question: what's our age? Are we 40 or 30? So the sociologists say that no, we are neither. We are not 30, 40, 50. They say the behavior, the belief system, the habits that we attain in our life, is it really the product of 30, 40 years that we have lived? No, it's not. It is the product of the history of the society that we are living in. The society which in the past started in the past and it's coming forward. And these belief system and these habits and customs and traditions were gained throughout the time. So it's not a matter of 30 or 40. So our real age in terms of our belief system, behavior and traditions is 30, 40, 50 plus the history of our society. So by understanding the trends and the laws of history, we will be able to understand ourselves. And the third reason, and the last but not least, as Quran says, سُنَّةُ اللَّهِ الَّتِي قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِ وَلَنْ تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. So Quran is telling us there are trends there, there are divine trends there, and they are fixed and unchangeable. We are required to go and find them, understand them, and apply them in order to build our future. Inshallah, in next session we will be discussing about why Karbala will enable us to understand the trends of history, and we will be talking about the history of history. وآخر دعوانا